Well, I'm Greg Spotts. I'm the Executive Officer and Chief Sustainability Officer for StreetsLA, otherwise known as the Bureau of Street Services. We're one of the 5 bureaus in the Department of Public Works for the city of Los Angeles. And we're responsible for constructing, designing, and maintaining many parts of the streets and sidewalks. I'm going to walk you through our recently selected innovation themes and talk about how this might be, a method for other organizations to respond to the critical and timely sustainability challenges and opportunities that we're all facing. What I tried to do, I made this PowerPoint especially for today, and every picture you see here in the front slide, we're going to refer to later in the presentation as an example of some of the innovative things that we're doing. So in 2020, back when we all could meet in person, we had a great multi-agency, multi-jurisdiction charrette at the VX Green Conference in person in Los Angeles. And it was neat. They provided this new kind of note taker who makes like a giant mural while you're talking of what you're talking about. And this mural that was made is like a picture of my work life right here. Like, this is everything that I do, all the different ways in which our 1,200 person strong team interacts with streets and sidewalks and street trees. And really the theme of this slide is the expectations for our streets and sidewalks are changing. The public right-of-way has become, in a sense, a contested space. Everybody wants a piece of it. Cyclists, pedestrians, transit riders, the motorists, street vendors, new kinds of delivery services, including delivery bots. And we're trying to adapt to a rapidly changing context in which the public wants a much richer experience from our streets than just a way to move cars. And there's this tremendous need for us to get out of cars, reduce carbon emissions, reduce air pollution, and make our cities more livable as they become warmer. And our agency is a sort of internationally known leader on exploring the possibilities of urban cooling, where we actually change the built environment to reduce heat-related health impacts on our population. LA is one of the only locations in the US that can have heat-related emergency room visits and deaths in the winter. We have a year-round threat of heat events that cause public health problems, and we're starting to look at how the streets can be mitigate some of that. So in this environment that we're working, the status quo is not sufficient. And there's a need for change that's much more rapid than what Public Works is used to. After all, public works departments in the US have been building streets and sidewalks with the same asphalt and concrete that were used before World War II. It's a very careful, liability, risk-oriented profession, and we're being asked to innovate in multiple dimensions faster than ever before. And I think this is in parallel with cities in general, the management of cities in general. Like, the city is in some ways the key location globally for our adaptation to climate change. And cities are going to need to innovate in many different ways and faster than ever before. We started to ask ourselves at StreetsLA, do we actually need to develop some kind of organizational strategy to drive this type of multifaceted rapid innovation? So we started an innovation steering committee, which I'm the co-chair of. And we brought together folks from across our whole agency, civil engineers, operations superintendents, landscape architects, external relations folks, all these tree experts, all these different disciplines that we have in our diverse agency. And we had people put on the table, innovation ideas that they thought were important. And we clustered them up, and we found that they kind of mapped to like 5 categories. And over last summer and fall, as we met monthly, we decided that having 5 innovation themes would be the way to organize the internally generated and externally generated ideas that come in. You know, we're constantly contacted by vendors of all sorts. Our own staff has lots of ideas. And we thought one way that we could speed and organize our innovation activities is to have these themes. And then when an idea comes up, we ask, does it drive one or more of these themes? And if the answer is no, then that's not a good use of our limited time and attention. And so let me walk you through these themes. The first one is digital everywhere. When I joined the agency 9 years ago, we were based either on paper or in legacy databases that had been programmed by people who'd already retired in, Microsoft SQL or Microsoft Access, and often still very much paper-based. Or people would print something out from a database that lives behind the city firewall and was only available on a city PC. And they'd take that piece of paper out in the field. They'd go do the field inspection of a tree or a sidewalk or a curb, write down their inspection notes. And then there was this drudgery of going back to the office and hand keying in the same thing that they just written on that piece of paper. To fulfill certain types of service requests, like where there's an inspection of a pothole and then dispatching the pothole, it went on paper and in and out of the computer twice. And those papers got routed around. So, we have a mission that we call Digital Everywhere, which means our staff has access to everything that they need anywhere that they are. Plans for construction, service requests from the public, the accounting information that drives our financials. We want everything to be available to our staff on any device in any place. And boy, did that turn out to be handy in COVID when we instantly took our 300 headquarters staff and made them working remotely from home. Thank goodness we had made a move towards the cloud before that. Digital everywhere also pertains to our interaction with the public. We want them to be able to have an all digital experience in asking for some service, having us let them know digitally the way they contacted us, how and when we fulfilled that service. So that's digital everywhere. Sustainable streetscape, that's actually the core business of what we do. We produce holistic, multi-benefit streetscape improvements, and we maintain our streets. And we're bringing in many more disciplines, including how we manage stormwater, how we manage mobility, how we manage urban heat to that. Greening our yards. We have more than 25 facilities. We have a huge footprint in the city of LA, and our yards, if you visit one of them, you feel like you're going back to the 1970s. The city hasn't invested much in these facilities. And the way they use water and energy is very outdated, and we want to improve that. Path to zero emissions fleet. We have as many pieces of equipment and vehicles as people in this agency because we need to have stuff when there's a wind event and there's trees down all over the city. You're not going to be able to rent towers to go and attack that problem, or cranes. If you don't have it and it's happening on the weekend, then you won't be able to resolve it. So we have a lot of pieces of equipment. Much of our equipment is heavy duty or specialized. These things are not available in battery electric today. So rather than, if you gave me $1 billion, I couldn't replace all my equipment with plug-in vehicles today because they don't yet exist. So our mission is to create a path to zero emissions fleet and help our supply chain deliver what we need on an accelerated basis. And then circular economy is sort of a new term that's in use in the sustainability community that's bigger and better than recycling. It's about, where did this product come from? What were the environmental implications of its production? How are we using it? And what are the environmental implications in how we use it? And then how does it get reused or disposed of? I've learned recently there's a term called upcycling, which is better than recycling. Can you turn something into a higher value product than what it might have been? So these are our 5 themes that we're using to drive our innovation. So let me walk you through some examples. So what I've done here is I light up in its original color the areas that are relevant to this particular innovation that we're pursuing. So you can see how some of them actually drive multiple innovation themes. So right now we're conducting what will turn out to be the largest street tree inventory ever done in the United States. Our agency maintains about 700,000 street trees. These are the trees along sidewalks and parkways in the city. And we have hired arborists from a company called Davey to go out and physically visit and assess every one of the trees that we maintain and put them all in GIS as a dot on the map. We'll now know the species, the size, the height, the health, and we're also identifying every one of the planting locations. What's so amazing is Davey, the company that's doing the field work, also supplies this software called Davey Treekeeper. And Davey Treekeeper produces a public-facing map of every tree that we've identified. My supervisor here in this picture is demonstrating for me how we can respond to a service request that comes in from MyLA 311. We've done a software integration using APIs to connect MyLA 311 to Davey Treekeeper. So as my staff rolls up on a tree inspection request or a tree emergency, they already know what type of tree we're dealing with here because of the tree inventory. So that map right there, actually, he's standing south of that green park that you see right there. So blue is an empty location, and green is an actual tree in those little squares. We're finding that almost 30% of the potential tree locations are vacant right now. The tree planting opportunity in Los Angeles in existing spaces, not cutting new tree wells in the concrete, just in our existing vacant spaces, could be up to 300,000 additional street trees if we could find the money to plant them and water them during the establishment period. All this data we're collecting is public facing, except the health of the tree, which we have to keep private for liability risk reasons. So, not only individuals, but communities, academics, other folks can use this public facing information to do research on the tree population. And every time one of our staff touches one of these trees in the future for maintenance or inspection, those will be logged into Davey Treekeeper. So we will have a maintenance record of every one of these street trees in the same way that UCLA might have a maintenance record of every air conditioner that they maintain in all their buildings. So this is really a game changer for us. Next one, plug-in vehicles. We've decided that we are going to be one of the leading city departments in LA and in the region in pursuing plug-in vehicles, even though we have a lot of unique uses for these vehicles. In the center is a Honda Clarity plug-in hybrid. We bought 10 of these 2 years ago for our uniformed investigators who do the enforcement for street vending. There was a new street vending ordinance. LA finally legalized street vending, which is an important part of our food culture in LA. And the folks who enforce those rules now dispatch in plug-in hybrid vehicles that largely use electricity rather than gasoline. Because the range of the vehicle is such that we can work a whole shift without exhausting the battery. The challenge for my agency is very few of my vehicles are passenger vehicles like that. Most of my supervisors today drive a pickup truck. They're only just starting to come out in electric. And then we have lots of specialty vehicles. Well, in the lower right there is our Delevo all-electric plug-in mini sweeper that services the downtown bike lanes. We have a network of protected bike lanes in downtown LA, and that zero carbon transportation network is serviced and cleaned by a zero carbon sweeper. I don't think that's happening anywhere else in the world, that active transportation modes are supported by a non-fossil fuel piece of equipment. We were one of the first 2 customers in the United States for that Italian machine that's only 48 inches wide, and it slips in between very narrow spaces we have in downtown. Now, in the upper right is our full-size sweeper. That's a much more complicated machine. But next Tuesday, we'll be having a public event to celebrate the receipt of our first 2 plug-in hybrid large-scale sweepers. That's a product that was developed by Elgin, the manufacturer, based on us demanding it. And by electrifying all the cleaning functions and driving them with a battery that would normally be in a BMW i3, we're able to reduce the compressed natural gas burn of that sweeper by 25 to 30%. It used to be that the engine powered the cleaning functions and the transportation of the sweeper, but this innovation that we demanded with our purchasing power means the engine only transports the sweeper. And sometime in the next, say, 3 years, when big companies like Freightliner produce commercial truck chassis of this size that are electric, Elgin will be all electric ready because they've already electrified the cleaning functions and taken them off hydraulics, which was the traditional way to go. In the lower left, you'll see this Roush 26-foot stake bed truck that's all electric. It's a pre-production version. They've lent it to the city of LA. My bureau is using it. And one thing we tried the other day is we used it to deliver the tree stock to a tree planting site. We have an aspiration in the next 12 to 18 months to field the first ever all-electric crew in public works in the United States. We want to have an all-electric tree planting crew that burns zero fossil fuels, and we think we can do it with equipment that's either commercially available or in pre-production, and that's a really exciting goal of ours. And in the upper left, that's Santa Monica next door to us. That's a public solar-powered charging station in Memorial Park in Santa Monica. We're buying 2 of these to help us start to support battery electric vehicles that we're using out of our yards in yards that don't yet have the power capacity to have wired charging. A network of solar chargers can give you a beachhead to start using electric vehicles at a facility that doesn't yet have the wired chargers. Sometimes it takes a year or more to install those wired chargers. So eventually, if we have a whole set of these, we can move them around, opening up new locations for battery electric vehicles to operate. Modernizing enforcement. 5 years ago, when I made assistant director, I started overseeing our investigation and enforcement division. And Chief Gary Harris told me that today, this was in 2015, our investigators wear street clothes, they drive their own personal car and get reimbursed for mileage, and they use a legal pad to write down everything they're doing, and they have to go back to the office and enter it into the computer. And he said to me, his vision is they drive a city car, they wear a uniform, and they're equipped with a mobile device. Well, we did that together. Gary and I, in the last 6 years, have done exactly that. Our investigators are driving these plug-in hybrids now. They're in uniform, they're equipped with a tablet or a laptop, and they're able to access all these different resources from the MyLA 311 service request system to the various maps that show how the public right-of-way is governed and all the different ordinances that they refer to. It's been really a great journey in taking that from kind of a, code enforcement model to more of a law enforcement model. And, this is a lot more credible way to speak to somebody who may be violating rules pertaining to the streets and sidewalks, than showing up with a notepad in civilian clothes and getting out of your personal car that's a mileage vehicle. Urban cooling. We're applying cool pavement coating to 200 city blocks this year in 8 historically underserved neighborhoods because the lighter colored pavement absorbs less heat and then projects less heat into the neighborhood at night. We did a partnership with NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory to visualize one of our urban cooling projects in Winnetka in the San Fernando Valley from the thermal camera aboard the International Space Station. The project is on a crescent-shaped street, and in the lower right, you can actually see our project from space. The thermal camera shows that the pixels within 100 meters of our cool pavement installation were on average 2 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than all the other pixels in Winnetka. So we've proven that urban cooling works, and we're one of the sort of anchor tenants of this growing group called the Global Cool Cities Alliance Cool Roadways Partnership, which now has 25 cities in it together. And all those cities are working together to advance the science of urban cooling and improve the delivery of these products and services. It was our purchasing power that got this contractor to build that rig that you see there. That's a trailer mounted tank with a spray rig. Previously, this product was installed by hand using squeegees or sprayers. And now the cost has been drastically reduced of this product, reduced by more than half, because our purchasing power drove a mechanized approach to applying it. Cleaner fuels, we have lots of heavy equipment that traditionally would be diesel, and we're one of the first people to buy it in compressed natural gas instead. That significantly reduces emissions of particulate matter, which cause asthma and other health effects. Now we've taken it to a whole nother level. All the compressed natural gas and diesel that we're buying is now renewable. It comes from renewable sources. And interestingly, when you look upstream, this is the circular economy aspect. When you look upstream at traditional fossil fuels, there's so much methane emissions from that petroleum extraction and exploration process and refining process. If you can make diesel or natural gas out of waste products, you avoid all of those upstream emissions. You can reduce the well-to-wheel carbon emissions of heavy trucking by more than 60% by switching to drop-in renewable fuels that are available today. We did that in the last year for our agency, and I'm very excited about that. Last slide, placemaking. That's the goal of what we're trying to do, create these holistic, multi-benefit streetscapes. On the upper left, this is behind City Hall East. This one spot kind of expresses my mobility dream for the city, where you have a protected bike lane, an inboard bus boarding island, so the bus and the cyclists aren't constantly competing for the same curbside space. You've got bike share available, and you're using colorful pavement coatings to both cool the pavement and demarcate what users are for what places. Lower left is Hoover Triangle. This was a kind of forlorn triangle of asphalt in between two streets that we converted into a plaza. We not only planted huge mature trees, we planted 72-inch box trees that had to come in by a crane. That's the first time the city's planted trees that big in a capital project. And we installed 2 shade sails there. So this really shows that urban cooling approach. Upper right is this new Dolores Wong Plaza in downtown LA. We took a slip lane where someone can make a right turn rather than use the stoplight, and filled that in and created a beautiful pedestrian plaza with trees, with nighttime lighting on string lights, and a really neat stormwater best management practice, this tiny little kind of stormwater retention, little kind of creek right in the middle of this hillside project. And the lower right, this is the Westwood Greenway at the Expo Westwood light rail stop. We took a bunch of land that was slated to be turned into surface parking around this light rail stop, and instead created this demonstration project. This is the broader Department of Public Works. LA Sanitation is lead on this project, but I worked on it personally when I was in Mayor Villaraigosa's office. And we took some stormwater out of the storm drain, brought it up to the surface, made a little sort of bioswale with it, like an artificial creek. And that storm water creates almost like a wetlands environment. And we planted native trees and plants that are attracting all kinds of wildlife. It's really amazing. I went in there the other day, and as I opened the gate, a whole bunch of doves and butterflies scattered. It was like a TV commercial, like right in the middle of dense West LA. Instead of parking, we created a habitat to support biodiversity. So this is us, StreetsLA. We have a great Twitter account at BSS Los Angeles. I have a very interesting personal Twitter account you could follow at Spotnik. And, anytime if you are an LA resident or you pass through LA and you need some help with something and public services, you can get that help with this terrific app, MyLA 311. Believe it or not, people don't want to make telephone calls anymore, and more than half of our pothole requests every month come in electronically now. So people really like the ability to either enter it in on a website or, even better, use the app. The app uses GPS to know your position, so you don't even have to enter your address. You can enter a bulky item, pick up for sanitation or a pothole or a tree emergency in less than 2 minutes on the app.